Hey chemistry folks, this is a quick video trying to show you how to use some of this simulation that you've been assigned to this week. Normally we would go through some of these things together in person, but since it's an online assignment, I wanted to help you with some of the things that I think might be a little confusing. Depending on which cohort you're in, if you're in cohort A, you're probably watching this video on the week of September 28th. And if you're in cohort B, then you're probably watching it on the week of October 5th. Anyhow, let's go ahead and take a look at the simulation. Let me pull it up here. All right, so when you click on it, you might end up at a page that looks something like this. And I want to say it's probably going to work best if you run it on a computer or some type of Chromebook. If you can't get that to work, if you're using it on your phone, you might have some issues with it. You might have to contact me or Mr. Holderman to see if we can find a way to work around those issues. But if you've got a computer or a laptop at your house, that's the best way to run this simulation. Okay, so when you go ahead and click play, you're going to get a message that looks something like this. You might get one that says you need Adobe Flash Player. If it's already installed, then it's not going to be an issue. If you're using Google Chrome, there's a few ways to work around it. So one of the things I notice that when I do this, instead of it looks like I have to download Adobe Flash Player, but if I just click attempt to view the simulation anyways, when I click it, I get this, which looks like an error screen, but then it says click to enable Flash Player. When I click it, I get a pop-up that says Flash Player is not going to be supported, but for this one, I can allow it for this page. So if I click allow, I should get the simulation to open up. Okay, here we go. So now I'm actually in the simulation. There are a few different ways, depending on the browser you're using. You might actually have to download Adobe Flash Player for it. I'm not totally sure, but you might have to do a little persevering here to try to figure out how to make sure that this actually runs. Once you're in the simulation, there's a couple other things I wanted to help you guys work through and see, because we haven't gotten to talk about all these in class. First of all, over on the right side of the screen here, there's this thing that says blocks. That's kind of like the menu for the simulation. So if I click on these different things, you'll notice it keeps changing the scenario. The handout that goes with it, it has a couple different things that I think in the handout we're going to do the same mass setting and then the same volume setting and then the mystery setting. Okay, so I want to point some things out about the same mass setting. So notice, of course, the mass is written right on here. They are in kilograms instead of grams. Remember, kilogram just represents every 1,000 grams as a kilogram. We learned that earlier this year. And then the water here, this is like a big pit of water on the screen. So that's a way to measure volume, right? This simulation uses something called displacement. So displacement is where you take a reading of water and then you add something to the water and you check how much the water has risen, and that tells you the volume of the object you dropped in the water. So for example, if I look at the 100 liters, that's how much water is in this pit right now. If I add this red block, okay, it sinks, and notice that the new volume has changed. Now it's 101.25 liters. So that amount that it rose, remember it started at 100 and now it's at 101.25. So that tells me the volume of this red block is 1.25 liters, right? Because that's how much it caused the water to rise. It's the difference. For each block, I'm going to give you the tip that it's easier if there's not other blocks in there, right? Because now if I go to add the green block in here, I have to remember what the level was before I put the green block. If you just keep the water empty, it always goes back to 100. That's a very easy way to figure it out. Another thing I want to show you is that sometimes when you put a block in, it floats, right? So when I throw this yellow block in here, I might be tempted to say that the volume is 5 liters, right? Because when it's out of here, it's 100. And then when I drop it in, it goes to 5.00, right? But notice that the yellow block is not actually submerged. It's floating. So this is actually only telling me the volume of about half of the block. So in this simulation, if I click and drag the yellow block down, when I get the volume, I want to make sure that that yellow block is totally under the surface. So now that I've totally got the yellow block under the surface, I can see that the volume of the block is not actually 5, but it's 10. So really keep in mind, if you put anything in there that floats at all, you got to click and drag it totally below the surface to make sure that you're getting the displacement of the whole object. right? So on this one, if I wanted to calculate the density, I know the mass is 5 kilograms. I can pull it in here and say, oh, it rose 10 liters. So I can get its density 5 kilograms divided by 10 liters. So its density will be, instead of grams per milliliter, it'll be kilograms per liter. Other things, oh, let's see, that one sank. Let's see if I can find another one that floats. Oh, I guess there was only one floating one in this one. Most of these, when you look at them, the mass is labeled right on the block. Sometimes they're all the same volume. So notice these ones are all the same size, but they're all a little bit different in terms of their mass. And then the last thing I want to show you is this mystery section. So when I look at the mystery section, notice the mass is not labeled. I have to find my mass by myself, and you can see it's right here. You can use the scale. So if I go ahead and I drop this on the scale, it tells me it's 0.64 kilograms. And then I can go ahead and I can drop it in the water. And okay, here's another good example of one that's floating. So it looks like it might be 0.64 liters as well, until I drag it down and I see, oh, it's actually 1 liter is the volume, not 0.64. Now, the thing with this section, you'll see that there's some questions on the handout that say, okay, so what is the identity of the block? Meaning, what material is it made of? You're going to have to click this Show Table button to figure that out. So you can maybe move this table around so it's not in your way. But what I would have to do is I would have to find, for example, the mass of the block, and then I have to find the volume of the block, and then I do mass divided by volume. And when I find its density, I'm going to compare it to the densities on this table. So whatever I find that the density of that block is, I'm going to say, oh, it must be made of whatever material it matches, right? So you're going to do that for all 5 blocks. Some of the other things that I want you guys to keep in mind for this video, remember you're very often using the equation mass divided by volume equals density. There are some questions on that handout where we ask you to solve for something other than density. So for example, there might be some questions where we say, okay, if you know the mass and the density, can you find the volume? Or if you know the volume and the density, can you find the mass? That's something we worked on in class this week. Remember, we measured out the sides of the block, and we had the volume and the density that was written on the block, and then we were able to calculate the mass or predict the mass. That's a similar skill that we're going to be using in these. So there's a little bit of rearranging equations, but not too much. For the most part, you're going to be filling out some data tables. And the way you're earning points for this assignment is you're just going to go ahead and use that handout to take a short quiz about this, and that's the way you'll earn the points for the assignment. Again, please reach out to me or Mr. Holderman if you're having trouble opening the simulation, but do your best to try to figure out how to get Flash Player to run in whatever browser you're using. And yeah, I think that's all. All right, hopefully we will talk to you guys soon. Bye.